Greetings and salutations. How you doing? I hope you had a really nice holiday, whatever holiday it is that you happen to celebrate in your corner of the world. It is now 2019, and in the Linux world, when people post about Linux and write about Linux, it's become sort of a tradition that people make predictions for the coming year. I am not going to do that. I will say that I'm cautiously optimistic for the future of desktop Linux in 2019. And when I talk about desktop Linux, I mean freely downloadable Linux that is not Linux being used by some mega corporation to put out some proprietary lockdown system. I'm talking about Android and Chromebooks and Azure Sphere OS from Microsoft. Anything that has Linux in it. Don't give me that crap about Chromebooks being open source and Chrome OS. Yes. No. Don't give me that crap about Android either. That is all Google, baby. They've got their tentacles all through that. And yes, there's open source versions of that, but they're pretty much useless now, aren't they? So don't even bother with that in the comments. Don't want to see it. As we roll along here, I'm going to be talking about some of the concerns and some of the frustrations that I have with Linux. But before we get into that, I want to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed to this channel in the last month. It's the last month of 2018. We've had well over 2,000 new subscribers. We have 65,000 subscribers total on this channel. We crossed that mark sometime right around the new year. And we are well past it at this point. When I started this channel in 2008, I posted every now and again a little bit about Linux. I was just playing around with it back then and just kind of feeling my way around. And that's when we had Ubuntu, like 8.10 and stuff like that. I think the first thing I posted about was Ubuntu 9.04 or whatever. And those videos were not extremely popular. And I was also working on another project at that time called Interface Webcast. And I did some Linux videos for that as well. And they just didn't take off, man. It was just, some people had nice things to say about it. Some people had nasty things to say about it. It just never quite gelled. It never took off as far as this channel was concerned. So I kind of backed away from that, especially since Interface ended and had to stop doing that in 2011. And that was kind of ahead of its time. That was a webcast that we did live, me and a fellow named Scotty D. And we talked about all kind of things, tech-related and entertainment and all that kind of stuff. And I think we were just way ahead of our time. If you've been around long enough to remember Interface, then you've been around this channel for quite some time. Anyhow, so I kind of quit posting about it and concentrated on other things. This channel is called Joe Collins. It's not called EzeeLinux. And so therefore I post videos about all kinds of things, and for a while there I was posting video mainly about audio related stuff, turntables, cassette decks, analog audio mainly, and that got to be kind of popular. And then I kind of backed off from that for a while. I didn't post anything. And then right around 2014, 2015 I started posting about Linux again. And one of the oldest videos that I have about Linux on the channel right now is this one that you're looking at the slide for, which is all Ubuntu all the time, which was posted on January the 13th of 2015. So that will be 4 years ago, coming up on the 13th of this month. And in those 4 years, this channel has just gone completely ballistic crazy. The idea was just simply for me to share my Linux experience at first. And then that morphed into, well, maybe I can help other people get started with Linux. And then that became the EzeeLinux project. And then that became another part of the EzeeLinux project, which was kind of freelance IT on the side. I wanted to learn how people reacted to the install process. I wanted to get a feeling for how it worked on different kinds of hardware. So what I did was I offered to help people one-on-one so I could learn more about getting Linux installed. And I did that for a couple of years, helped people for, it said, just give me $50. It was that it wasn't really like a business. It was just, give me $50 for my time. I'll help you get started. That sort of thing. I don't do that anymore. Some of the old videos. It was really a learning experience for me. The reason why I don't do it anymore is simply because I don't have time. Nowadays, I spend a great deal of my time answering people's emails, YouTube comments, messages, all kinds of crazy stuff. So that takes up a great deal of time when it comes to the time I have to devote to doing this. This is not a job for me, gang. This is more like a passionate hobby at this point. If it was a job, I would have quit a long time ago, because it's a lot of hard work, it's a lot of thinking, and it's not a whole lot of money. So that's the way it is. But it has just really taken off, and I think the reason why is because I have a pretty simple approach. I just talk to people that are interested. I am not interested in being part of the server jockey Linux community, the neck-bearded Linux developer nerds out there. I mean, some of the videos I've posted have been aimed at more advanced users, but honestly, it's just really just trying to help regular people get started, and it's been very successful, so thank you very much. With all of that said, I have to say that I am 4 years down the road a bit disappointed at where desktop Linux is at. There's been a lot of things that have changed for the good, and a lot of things that have not changed for the good. And unfortunately, I feel that in some ways that all of us out here who provide this Linux content are spinning our wheels. Simply because of the fact that I posted a video middle of December called The Truth About Linux. Yeah, it's a clickbaity title, ain't it? Worked, too. Got more than 50,000 views on that jank right now. And in that video, I basically just kind of outlined my experiences over the last 4 years working with people through email and all the messages that I get through all the different avenues about what I have found Linux to be really like for new people starting out. And that video got a lot of response, and some of it was really cool. Some people thought it was great. Some people agreed with me. Some people disagreed with me in a very agreeable way. They disagreed in an agreeable way. And then there were some people who disagreed, and of course there were many people who called me every name under the sun and told me I was a complete idiot and didn't have any clue what I was talking about. But one of the things about that video that I noticed is that I was getting a lot of the same BS comments that I've always gotten over and over and over again. Linux doesn't work. Linux is only good for servers. Linux is only good for phones. Linux will never work on a desktop. Linux is stupid. Linux is whatever. It's the same things over and over and over again that come up from people. And I got to tell you, it's discouraging. And I'll tell you why that is a little bit later in the video. But there's also a lot of corporate influence on Linux right now. We've got Microsoft, who's all interested in Linux and loves Linux right now, and Google and all these other people as well. And that scares the crap out of me for the future, honestly, because these companies have one goal. That is to, especially Google and Microsoft both, but really the goal is to rope as many people into their ecosystem as they can so they can scrape as much information from them as possible so that they can figure out how to put ads in front of those people. That's it. That's what Google exists for. It's less of a technology company and more of an advertising agency. And Microsoft, with their consumer products, they do exactly the same thing, gang. And the telemetry that goes back, the spying, all of this other stuff. And I say this as a Google Chrome user. I download and install Google Chrome on every machine that I run. I know what Google is doing to me. I understand that. But the thing is that when you talk about an operating system that is run by one of these giant people and you have no control over it, you sign that away when you agree to the terms and conditions. And we've covered that before. And those companies exerting a great deal of influence on Linux, I don't think is a particularly good thing. So let's change subject real quick because I want to talk a little bit about where I'm at with Linux right now. and what I use, and that is Ubuntu 18.04, the vanilla version that has the GNOME desktop. And it's Ubuntu's spin of the GNOME desktop. This isn't the generic GNOME desktop that comes from the GNOME project. This is the GNOME desktop that they have come up with. They came up with this wonderful dock application which mimics a lot of the usefulness and usability of the Unity desktop, which they retired. So they did a really good job transitioning from their Unity reality to the GNOME desktop reality. They kind of tamed it. They locked it down in some ways. Of course, if you want a regular GNOME session, all you got to do is install one package and then you can have the full GNOME experience. But this is what you get when you install vanilla Ubuntu. And whether you are a fan of GNOME or not, I don't really care. The point is, this works. It runs. People go, do you have problems multitasking? No. Does it crash? No. I've had no problems with this. I'm running this on 2 computers. Cindy uses this every day on her HP laptop, and I use it on my Dell workstation here. And guess what? No problems whatsoever. I still run Linux Mint. I have one machine in the house that's running Linux Mint 18.3. And I administer a lot of people who run Linux Mint. What is my opinion of Linux Mint? Because many people have asked. I think Linux Mint is a great distribution. I'm not nearly as excited about it as I once was. I still think it's a good place for newbies to start out with. But, you know, hey. The main attraction for the Ubuntu environment is that I know it very well and I can make it do what I want it to do. Ubuntu is not the most user-friendly distribution. We're talking about just Ubuntu as Ubuntu comes from Canonical, not the different spins of Ubuntu. But it's still Ubuntu, so you can make it do whatever you want it to do. Anything that you want to turn this into, you can. You can put any desktop you want on it. So what do I tell people when it comes to the new Linux user? What do I recommend still to this day in 2019? Well, I'm going to tell you what I recommend. I recommend Linux Mint for a certain kind of user. So let's talk about Linux Mint in 2019. This is 19.1 Tessa. I just posted a video that's doing quite well about that, in which I complained about the new layout for the Cinnamon desktop. I have found that even if you do push this button right here to roll back to the old setting, it still doesn't work exactly the same way. And I have a problem with this because I feel like that there are certain users out there who are just getting started, that are getting started with Linux Mint 19, that when they do their upgrade in place, if they should choose to do that, that this is going to throw them for a loop. And I think it's kind of a, you know, in the Linux community, everybody is obsessed with a desktop. Let me tell you what, gang, I have developed applications to run on Linux desktops, and what I found out in that process is that the underbelly is all the same. They all run on the same parameters, so when you're writing a program, it doesn't matter whether you're writing it for GNOME or KDE or Mate or any of these desktop environments. It makes no difference. And I would really like to see at some point that the Linux world gets less fascinated with desktops and starts working more on applications. But that's my opinion, and I'm digressing. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that this is a distribution of Linux, as I said in that video, that has forked several applications from the GNOME project simply because they didn't like the interface and they felt like that they wanted a more traditional environment. But yet, with Linux Mint 19.1 and Cinnamon 4.0, the desktop project that they offer to the community, they have changed the basic workflow of the desktop. When I stated that in that video, some people said that I was an idiot and didn't know anything about design. This has very little to do with design. It has to do with the fact that you're changing workflow on people. And for Linux Mint, workflow is everything. It hasn't changed since Cinnamon came out, you know, and they changed it. So I'm not real happy about that. But there are some good things here as well. There are things about the Linux Mint project that I like, and there are things that I don't like. They have some issues in here that they simply do not address. That's in that distribution, and that's talking about down at code level, and that used to not bother me so much, and I used to sort of kind of when people in the community would criticize Linux Mint for that, I would go, hey, it works, and for new users it's fine. But as time has gone by, and I've tried to contribute back upstream to Linux Mint myself, I have met that resistance in that you can figure out what the problem is, point out the patch, give it to them, and they will ignore it. So I'm not real thrilled about that. But for the certain kind of new user, and Linux Mint would be for somebody who just wanted a system up and running and it worked. But like I said, it's not for everyone. And they really need to have a little bit of hand-holding when they set up Linux Mint, because there's one more thing that I want to point out that I did not point out in the last video I posted about it. So I would like to put it out there. Let's open up the Synaptic Package Manager. And yes, it does run excruciatingly slow in a virtual machine. That's another problem with Linux Mint right now. I want to show you this setting. So if you go in here and you say, let's go to settings, please. And we'll go to preferences right up top. You will see that we have this, and I've turned this on at some point. It says consider recommended packages as dependencies. I could not see that. Saved my life for some reason. And this is usually shipped with this turned off. And what that does is it makes certain programs that are available in the repositories not work properly because certain parts of the other programs that whatever program you download depends on to provide certain features aren't there, because the developers aren't real great at defining the line between a recommended package and an absolute dependency. So for whatever reason, Linux Mint ships with that off. Ubuntu ships with that on. Consider recommended packages as dependencies. With that on, everything works the way it's supposed to. Yes, it will install a lot of frivolous packages in certain applications, but it will make the program work the way it's supposed to, whereas sometimes you don't get that. So that's certain little things in Linux Mint like that I don't like. Okay. UbuntuMATE is great for new users who are a little bit more adventurous and they want to really get into exploring their new system and they want to customize it, because the UbuntuMATE experience is one of the most customizable there is in the Linux world. You can choose all kinds of different layouts for this desktop. I kind of have a custom layout that I do. This is how I set my brother's up, and it's Redmond with an advanced menu. But you can make it look and act like any desktop that you've ever seen in your life, which is pretty cool. The UbuntuMATE community is awesome, and since it is just Ubuntu with a Mate desktop on it, then it does everything that you can do with Ubuntu. And so therefore, like my brother's running this and having a great time with it. So those are the two distributions that I really recommend to absolute new users. Some people want to use Ubuntu. They just want to use standard Ubuntu, vanilla Ubuntu, like what we got right here. And if they do, I will help them get started with it. It is more involved. It is not the most user-friendly experience, but there you go. So that's where I'm at with Linux right now. I'm not interested in what a lot of other distributions are doing. And the reason why is because it's just starting to feel like, and I've been doing this for many years, gang, is that people are just sort of going around in circles. There's so much fragmentation in the Linux world right now. So many people trying to reinvent the same wheel. Even Linus Torvalds talked about that. And I found that to be very discouraging, because in that particular interview, he also said that he felt like the future for Linux was with Chromebooks. And Chromebooks, like I said earlier, it's a locked-down proprietary system. Yes, it uses the Linux kernel, but we're not talking about open Linux here. So that should tell you that when the creator of the Linux kernel is saying that the future lies with mega corporations like Google, and you can, sit there and you could sit around and wonder about the political influences that caused him to say that. I'm not going to get into all of that in this video. That I find that to be quite discouraging. So that's what I'm talking about there. Let me see here. I have notes, and I should be following them. I go off the script, and then I go, into other things here. I want to talk about YouTube as we move forward in 2019. Am I done talking about Linus Torvalds and the desktop and fragmentation and all that stuff? I guess so. I am concerned about that myself. I mean, that was the point that I'm trying to make. I'm definitely concerned about the fragmentation because it's starting to become an issue, gang. The thing is that even people who are very into Linux complain about it. And they say, well, we have problems with the desktop. And yet the only solution that anybody can come up with is to start a new desktop. Start something new. Look at the Solus project, for instance. That was a reaction to that. It's like, oh, this has gotten screwed up, and we're going to redo that. And Ike Dougherty started from scratch. And, of course, Ike is, I don't know what his... I couldn't give you what his current relationship to Solus is, but he's off doing other things now. But that was the only way he could see to fix it, was to start over and create a new desktop called Budgie. And then on top of that, there's these names, and I want to put this in here because that's another thing that's a problem. The GNOME desktop has been around since the late 90s. And for many of those years, we called it GNOME. And then in the last, I'd say 3 or 4 years, we have this movement of people out there who are calling it GNOME. And that's a new thing, because the G stands for something. And so you have in this community, literally have people who are saying GNOME, and then other people say GNOME. I fall into, I'm going to call it GNOME. That's the category I'm in. I'm not calling it GNOME. I think that is stupid. And it's stupid from a marketing point of view, because you don't change the name of a product as you rolling along trying to sell it. You just don't do that. GNOME is fine. The original symbol for GNOME is a little bitty foot, which refers to the mythical garden creature, the gnome. When you look that up in a dictionary, yes, it starts with G. But we don't say the G. It's silent. So now you have idiots going around saying GNOME. Okay, that's one. How about this one, which is another bane of contention? UbuntuMATE. UbuntuMATE, the Mate desktop. Well, let's see here. I'm going to open this up, which is appearances. It's going to change the background, but I want to go to themes. No, I do want to change the background, because there's one in particular that I want, which I know is in here. And maybe they've changed it. Maybe they've dropped it. There used to be one that said MATE in great big huge letters, but I don't see it in here anymore. But we'll just put this one up. Why not, right? Let's just go ahead and throw that one up there, because it will illustrate my point. Ubuntu. What does MATE say to you? Mate. But that's not what this is. It's named after a South American drink. Every single time that I have posted this and talked about this, people say something in the comments. It's dumb. We should call it mate, because that's what it looks like. But to the people who developed it originally in Argentina, who forked the GNOME 2 desktop, they were talking about mata, which is a herbal plant they make tea out of. And then the fellow who launched UbuntuMATE, Martin Wimpress, he pronounces it mate, which is the way I pronounce it, because I really can't do the Spanish pronunciation justice. It should, yeah, I'm sorry. All of this is very, very, very confusing. And it's very frustrating for me. And I know I'm rambling on about this, but if you dealt with what I dealt with on a daily basis, talking to people in comments, I have so many avenues right now for people to talk to me. It's unbelievable. And it's just over and over again. And all of this stems from the fact that in the Linux community, we're dealing with a lack of any kind of marketing. Okay? So that is the last thing that I want to talk about here. I want to touch on that real quick. I did want to get this in here, so I'm going to get it in here. Okay, and I have to tell you a story first. So we're changing subject here, gang, and I put the YouTube page up here on the screen because we're changing subject. Years ago, when I realized that I was no longer going to be working in radio broadcasting because I had, when the economy crashed in 2008, it wasn't long before that all of the media companies, all the stocks went down to penny stocks. Most people don't remember that. See, the same thing happened to the media companies that happened to the banks later. But the banks, when their stock crashed, then that's when the whole economy stopped. But before that happened, before there was the crash of 2008, it happened with the media companies. And during that time, I got laid off, and then could never find another job in radio. And so I said, well, I think I'm kind of done with that anyway. I'm kind of burned out on it. Anyway, I started an insurance agency for a while. And one of the things about that is that we were representing a big company, insurance company called Aflac. And when we were doing the setup and the training for that, one of the things that was pointed out to us was that as an independent agent for the Aflac insurance company, we would benefit from the fact that the insurance company advertised a lot. And they still do. And so we got a lot of merchandise that had the Aflac logo on it and all that stuff when we launched our insurance agency. And they were right, because the parent company went out and had that advertising in place. It was an easy sell. People knew what we were talking about. So as we were starting along here with this insurance agency, great, it was like, this is great. We had advertising. It was a nationally known brand. Everything was cool. Then the economy crashed proper. This was in 2008, and we couldn't sell anything to anybody. So the ad agency, or not the ad agency, but the insurance agency that I was working with and started, failed. That was the end of that. But there was a lesson in there, and that was the power of a brand, the power of having that advertising out there. And when you're dealing with Linux, we don't have that. There is no national advertising. As a matter of fact, a lot of people on the street don't even know what Linux is. Some people who have some experience with computers may have heard of Ubuntu. They kind of know what that is. Maybe a little bit. That's kind of a weird thing that runs on servers, and I'm not sure whether you can use that on the desktop. But when you walk up to them and say, hi, what's Linux? They go, I don't know. Doesn't that have something to do with Android? And the reason why that exists in the community is, in the world, not the community, we know about it, is because there's no advertising. And when you're dealing with something like a Chromebook or an Android device, or you're dealing with Microsoft Windows or Apple, these are all proprietary systems that are pushed down by mega corporations that can afford to advertise. I saw advertisements not long ago for Chromebooks on TV, which in a way is good for Linux, because yes, there's a kernel running, but it's not Linux. Okay? And nobody ever is going to try and run the sophisticated software that people are looking for on a Chromebook. They don't think of Chromebooks that way. It's really, Chrome OS is nothing more than a beefy browser that runs on its own machine, and it's very locked down. And so, yeah, that doesn't help us if you are one who is like me, who thinks in terms of Linux as a free and open system. So for those of you who, Canonical is our best. I honestly believe that Canonical is our best friend. We should be supporting Ubuntu. We should be contributing to Ubuntu, monetarily and code-wise, because that's the one that people have heard of. And you may disagree with what Canonical is doing or their dealings with Microsoft or whatever, but that's honestly the way I feel. Honestly. I think that Ubuntu is the one that we really need to concentrate on, because they're the ones that are in the position at this point to maybe push free and open desktop Linux ahead. Whether you like it or not, that's the way it is. So anyway, changing subjects once again. This is a long, rambly-ass video. I'm just running my mouth, ain't I, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I got a lot to say. And if you've watched this far, that's great. Let's talk a little bit about the YouTube channel, and then we'll wind this diatribe up. Okay, the YouTube channel has grown by leaps and bounds, and over the years, through this YouTube channel, I have been able to talk to and meet people from all around the world, dude. It's unbelievable. My worldview has changed completely, 100%, since I started this channel. Completely. And I'm talking about within the last 4 years. I'm not talking about 8 years ago, 10 years ago. I'm talking about in the last 4 or 5 years, because of that interaction with people, because of Linux, it has completely changed my worldview. I have a totally different attitude on the world. And thank you for that. Thank you for each and every one of you who has taken the time to comment on a video and said something nice to me and said something supportive and taught me something about yourself, about your culture, where you come from, and your world. It has been absolutely humbling. That's the best part of this and the reason why I continue doing it. However, there is a dark side, and the dark side is a non-stop barrage of negative comments. Chris Fisher over at Jupiter Broadcasting referred to the YouTube comments section as a cesspool. And I absolutely agree with him. At one point, Brian Lunduke this year completely took the comments off of all of his YouTube videos because he could not deal with the hate speech that was being sent his way. And when he did that, he got even more hate speech from the community because he reacted to what he felt like was a threat to his own safety. And it's very easy for people who watch these videos and are viewers, or maybe even small-time YouTubers who have channels with maybe 1,000 or 2 subscribers. It's very easy for those people to look at the reaction that somebody like myself might have to that and not understand why. And, it's like every time I mention it, I'm called a drama queen. Every time I mention it, I get comment after comment that says something about how, well, you should just ignore those people and you should not deal with them. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't have a clue what the hell you're talking about until you live it. You just simply don't know. It's the underbelly of human society. It is the nastiness that you have to deal with. Most what people say is very nice, but then other people are not. And this year, I have had to deal with more than I could possibly even begin to explain to you. Most of the time, you don't see those because I have pretty strong filters in place that catch a lot of these comments before they get there. I filter for words. I'm also now using the beta version of the filters that YouTube has, which seems to help even more. And if I see comments that have a lot of obscenity and nastiness, I will just delete them. And honestly, if you're just wrong, I'm going to delete you. I mean, I swear to God, that might sound really harsh and arbitrary on my part, but I ain't got time to argue with you, and I'm not going to do it. And if you come on to my videos and you post something that I blatantly know is absolutely wrong or misleading, even if you're trying to be positive about sharing your misleading information because you were misled by somebody else, I'm going to delete it. I'm not going to deal with it. That's the way. That's the new way how we're dealing with comments moving forward. I do try and answer people's comments. I answer people's questions. I comment on what you say, but the sheer volume means that I can't do it for everyone. And like I said, a lot of comments will just disappear because they will either be caught with the filters, or if you're just nasty or you're whatever, it's just going to go poof. And I'm going to be more careful about what I post, and I'm going to be more careful about what I say in my posts, because I have had some pretty scary experiences. I'm going to leave it at that this year. I've had some people that have gone beyond being nasty in YouTube comments. In my videos, there are other ways to contact me. You can contact me through the webpage. You can contact me on the forum, EzeeTalk. You can contact me through Facebook. Those are all fine. Those are all actually much easier, more moderatable than this is on YouTube. But I will say that most of the nastiest comments that you'll see on YouTube, not only on my videos, but if you're starting out, or if you're a YouTuber and you're watching this, I have noticed one thing. If you see a particularly nasty comment, go look at the other person's channel, and what you're going to see is that this person doesn't post any content, or they have very little content up on the channel. Very seldom are you going to have anybody that has any significant amount of videos posted that is going to post something nasty. And that's simply because of the fact that anybody who would do that, and you know, if they're getting it as much as every other YouTuber is, then they would have to have no heart in their body whatsoever, no human soul, to turn around and abuse other people on their other YouTube channels. There's just no way. So I'm touching on that just to simply let you know, I mean, for you, the viewer, it really doesn't make that much difference. But for me, it does change what I can answer and what I will deal with. And a lot of times, maybe your comment will not post. Maybe it'll get caught by a filter. Maybe it will just lost in the shuffle and that sort of thing. And I do apologize for that, but that's just simply the way it is. And I have actually been toying with the idea of maybe, really restricting the comments on YouTube to a point, maybe to the point of disabling them. Because it's daily, gang. It's every single day. I mean, you sit down. Imagine getting your morning cup of coffee, and you sit down at your computer, and you go and you open your email application, and there's 100 emails in there, people asking you questions, people making comments, and you know for a fact that 10 of them out of there are going to be really nasty. And it just wears on your soul after a while. It's like, I some days will sit and stare at this computer before I'll click on that and go, I've got to do that. I've got to deal with that. So my solution is just to delete it. And it's a very sad commentary on the way the world is today. But, yeah. Some people have gone beyond that as well, which surprises the hell out of me, because Linux is free. And even though we have very strong opinions within the Linux community about what we think it should be and what it shouldn't be and everything, I just find it interesting. Somebody posted this in the comments. I mean, so much abuse, so much vitriol is thrown at the Linux community, that, and from within the community and from without, it's unbelievable. But we're talking about technology which is free to everybody. You don't need money to use this. You don't need to ask permission to change it. You don't need to do anything with it at all, except use it, contribute to it, love it, hate it, whatever. But yet it is, the Linux community itself and the technical community around the Linux community just seem to delight in hurting people and coming up with these crazy things that people say, and the lies and the myths and the BS. It's very hard to deal with. So, moving forward in 2019, my goal is to post videos that will be useful and very positive. I really do not want to comment on the politics, although I may get tempted to do so. We'll see how this goes. It's going to depend on your feedback and where the channel goes this year. I don't have any definite plans. We'll see how it goes. Let's put it that way. We're going to see how it goes. And we're going to take it one video at a time. And I'm going to stop talking now.